for me, the hallucinations were people putting their hands out, begging,
Yeah.
and there was a massive hole in the road behind my left-hand side
Yeah.
that if I was to slow down, I would end up falling in that hole. I had the energy drink. By the time I packed my flasks away, put my harness back on, put my rucksack back on, the snowbank was back to snowbank, and the hole in the road had gone. So it was worthwhile listening to my body. Do what you need to do to get to
Yeah.
the finish line.
Absolutely
So
fascinating that you can still process that when your body's under so much stress and exhaustion at that point that you are having these hallucinations, but you still have the ability to be yourself and think yourself and kind of overcome your mind that's trying to overcome you. Welcome to the T1 Determined podcast, where we bridge the conversation of type 1 diabetes and endurance. I'm Joseph Anthony Marcello, a runner, a weightlifter, a mountaineer, and athlete. As someone living with T1D, I'm on a mission to uncover and share science-backed information that drives optimal performance and longevity. And as a storyteller, I'm here to explore and share incredible feats in T1D sports physiology. Let's tackle this together. Today, I talk with T1D Ultra Endurance Athlete, the one and only Roddy Riddle. Roddy is a former international cyclist who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the late age of 40. In 2013, he ran the Marathon des Sables Ultra Marathon, which is a 154-mile race in the Sahara Desert of Morocco. In 2016, he first attempted the Arctic 6633 Ultra Marathon, which is a 352-mile race in the Yukon of Canada, pulling out only 70 miles from the finish line. 1 year later, though, in 2017, he returned to become the first Scotsman and the first T1D to finish the Arctic 6633 in second place, holding the sixth fastest time in race history. Roddy's motto is, "Rule type 1 diabetes, don't let it rule you." As you can tell, Roddy is a beast. Our conversation dives deep into the mental and physical fortitude that comes with being an ultra athlete managing type 1 diabetes. As we build this podcast from the ground up, your support is crucial for our continued growth. Wherever you're listening, please share this episode and others with anyone you think might benefit. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at T1D_endurance, on Facebook at T1 Determined, and visit our website, T1Determined.net. Before we dive in, I am not a medical doctor. The topics discussed and the recommendations shared by myself and our guests are personal experiences and not medical prescriptions. Always consult your healthcare team and medical professionals before making any changes to your daily routines, management, or therapies. And now, my conversation with T1D Ultra Endurance Athlete, Roddy Riddle. Roddy, thank you very much for joining me today. You are a person of, there's no other word to say it, but a person that contains the definition of endurance. And I really want to start off with asking you, what does the word endurance mean to you?
just long distance, been doing stuff for a period rather than short efforts. Endurance is like endurance events, basically.
And what do you think it is about? I mean, I am fascinated by stories of just humans pushing through I can tell you one of the best books that I've read was about the 1952 Everest expedition and then the 1953 Everest expedition. And it's something about humans pushing beyond the limits of what is previously thought possible in places where it is thought that humans cannot survive. What do you think it is outside of you, and just kind of referencing humanity as a whole, about pushing our limits that us humans continue to try to reach?
Your brain's a very, very strong tool. So if you can convince your brain that you're going to do something, um, like when I went to the Arctic, um, as I say, the brain's a very strong tool. So if you can convince your brain, fitness, obviously you need fitness as well, but the brain's the strongest tool that you need.
And it's the mind over the body, isn't it?
Definitely.
And with as type 1 diabetics, we definitely have, I would call it like an obstacle with the body, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. You yourself are a cyclist and an ultra runner. I'd love for you to kind of now take the time to just give a brief introduction about yourself. For our audience that doesn't know you, obviously there is a lot of people that do know about you and the amazing work that you have done.
Okay, so I'm an ex-international cyclist. I've raced for Scotland and I've raced for Great Britain, basically all over the world. Representing Scotland in the 1994 Commonwealth Games in Victoria Island in Vancouver, where I finished ninth in the road race, which is, as you say, and it's the main endurance cycling event at the Commonwealth Games. I think it was about 118 miles. Um, Raced Switzerland, Belgium, Canada. I've been to Saudi cycling. We raced in for Great Britain and South Africa. So I've raced all over the world basically. Um, then in 2008, some severe things started happening to my body. I lost about 2.5 stone in 8 weeks. My wife was heavily pregnant with our youngest child, Finley. She got very concerned. I had an unquenchable thirst. I was constantly going to the toilet, and I also had blurred vision. So, because of the weight loss and Lynn being heavily pregnant, she did a wee bit of research, and it looked like it could be type 1 diabetes. So, she got a home self testing kit. So, the home self testing kit arrived at the house on the Monday. I did the test, and it looked like, yes, you've got type 1 diabetes. But I had a dilemma. I had a ticket that midweek to go to see Glasgow Rangers, who I support, play St Petersburg in the champions, European Champions final. So I knew if I went to the doctor, there's no way the doctor would allow me to go to the the football match. So I decided to wing it and go to the game. I didn't enjoy the game, not just because the Rangers got beat, but because I was really tired and lethargic. And so I went down with my mate Stevie to Manchester, and it's about six and a half hour drive. So it's quite a long drive.
Yeah.
So the idea was Stevie was going to drive down in the morning, and I was going to drive home after the game. So after the game, I got in the car to start driving, and it started to drizzle rain. And because I had blurred vision, it meant that the oncoming car's headlights, it made it really dangerous for me to drive the 6.5 hours home. So poor Stevie, who'd driven down in the morning, had to drive all the way home. So I'd pre-made an appointment with a doctor, and the doctor sent me straight to Rigmore Hospital, where that day I was diagnosed and taught how to inject insulin.
So at that time, you kind of knew something was going on and you knew type 1 diabetes, it had a name to it, but you were you were still doing stuff. It wasn't as severe until you actually went to the doctors and they realized that like, "Hey, you need to go to hospital."
Yeah, yeah. So when the test kit came on the Monday,
Mhm.
I had a few nights to do a bit of research on type 1 diabetes. And I realised that because I knew nothing, I knew absolutely nothing about it, which
And
kind of embarrassed me for.
how old were you at this point?
I was 40, so I was quite late in life. So I was very lucky. I didn't have to go through childhood
Mhm.
and universities, college, school. I had the international cycling career before I was diagnosed, so I class myself as a lucky type 1 diabetic.
Mhm.
Um, so that few nights that I had before going to the football match, I did a bit of research and I realised that type 1 diabetes was something that was controllable if you were willing to take it by control. Don't let it rule you. You rule it. So I've got quite a positive mindset. So I decided that I wasn't going to let it stop me doing anything that I'd previously done in the past.
It's I think personally extremely inspiring. I mean, you as you were saying, you were already an established athlete at this point. How was being somebody who was at such a high competitive level and then all of a sudden you have some sort of new diagnosis? There must have
So
been sort of like a learning curve, right?
it it's a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to carry on doing a endurance events. So in a safe environment, my wife Lynn ordered a treadmill for me, and I put that in my garage. And I have a diary that I write all my blood glucose levels down in the diary
Mhm.
before exercise, during exercise, and after exercise. So basically, what I'm doing is building up my manual on what my type diabetes does with the exercise. So I ran on the treadmill for a few months until I learnt what happens to my blood glucose levels, what works, taking fuel on board, and then that gave me the confidence to then start running again in the hills.
Do you think that working so in the months preceding to your diagnosis, do you think that being so fit and in shape helped you with like kinda not notice the signs for as longer, and then once you got the diagnosis, already having that mindset helped you to kinda learn the ropes of step by step with it and then how your body reacts initially?
Yeah, well, when I was finally diagnosed, the doctor came through and goes, say, "How did you get here today?" And I says, "I cycled from a doctor's to here." And he goes, "You're lucky you haven't gone into diabetic coma." He says, "The blood glucose reading that you've got today is a very special reading that we don't see very often." It was 45.6 mmol. So I think the fitness, going with the doctor definitely helped. And also, because we had dietitians and stuff like that when I raced, the transition for me being diagnosed was a lot easier than it would have been if I wasn't an ex-international cyclist.
Yeah. That makes sense. You had so did you have, like, a team around you as soon as you were diagnosed? Were they more so explaining what you should do, or were you, on the other hand, telling them what you want to do and asking how to get to that?
It was a sort of two-way thing. It was a mix of both. The clinic that we have up here in the Highlands of Scotland in Rainbow Hospital, where I was diagnosed, they're unbelievably. They're just you're not a number. They know who you are.
That's
You
really
you
great.
go into reception and person knows you, so you're not just a number. You get really looked after. So yeah, I was so lucky to have them during my diagnosis. I mean, my diabetic nurse a few nights after being diagnosed phoned me at night just to see how I was getting on, and I told her what my readings were and everything. She goes, "I don't think you'll be hearing from me for quite a while." She says, "You sound like you've got this. You've got this."
That's great, and how many months after the fact was that from your diagnosis?
From the diabetic nurse phoning
Yeah.
me. That was just a few nights after.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
So
great.
she when I told her what my readings were from my diary, she
Mhm.
just said, "Carry on doing what you're doing because you're doing something right."
That's really great. So, now let's get into what your race is now that you are a type 1 after the fact and you're learning how to deal with it. The first big race, if you can at least explain what led you up into close to the finish line.
My first endurance ultra marathon was the Marathon Sables in the Sahara Desert in Morocco. Now, the reason I wanted to do that was when I was diagnosed, I knew absolutely nothing about type 1 diabetic, and
Yeah,
that really embarrassed me for somebody that has raced all over the world. So I decided I wanted to raise awareness. So I did the Marathon Saba, which is a 154-mile a ultra day ultra marathon. I did that one in 2013, yeah,
okay,
and
yeah,
leading up to the Marathon Saba, I raised over £30,000 for two diabetes charities as well.
very awesome.
So as I say, there was the longest stage was 48 mile,
Mhm.
and for part of that day, it was in the high 40s, so it was absolutely cooking, and it was in massive sand dunes as well. On the last day, my insulin crystallized in my insulin pump, so I had to get backup insulin and get it into my pump. But I finished, and I was the first type 1 diabetic to finish the marathon solo.
That's awesome. Were you in your training and then in the execution, were you training for the heat that you were about to experience? And then did you notice any sort of direct effect that was caused on your blood sugars by the heat?
Yes, what I was doing was got invited down to Napier University in Edinburgh,
Yep,
which is a 3 hour drive. So it's 165 miles, I think it is, leading up to going over to Marathon Sabla into their climatic chamber, where they would turn the heat up to what the temperature was going to be.
yep,
So you can acclimatise for the heat, but you can't acclimatise for the cold.
yep.
So that really helped me going down for a few weeks in a row before going over to Morocco to acclimatise for the heat. And what I was doing was I was going in with basically all the stuff that I was going to be racing with, so I could test it. The gaiters over my shoes to stop sand getting in my feet, because scorpions and snakes and that weren't my biggest fear. My biggest fear was sand getting in my shoes and getting blisters, and then the blisters getting infected, and we all know what happens then. You can end up with amputations, which is not an ideal situation. So I got very good gaiters glued and stitched into my running shoes, which went right all the way up to my knees, and right the way through the whole event. I didn't get any sand on my shoes, so I was very lucky.
That's awesome. Did that add to the heat? I mean, I think of when you're running in a desert, you want to shed as much layers as possible. Was it the gaiters, were they actually light fabrics?
Yeah, they were made out of parachute silk, so they
Okay,
were very light. Yes,
nice, nice.
they were a wee bit sweaty, but when you're in late 40s degrees, you're going to be sweaty no matter what you're wearing. So,
Yep.
yeah, but it meant I could test all my kit. I could test the fuel that I was going to be using in the climatic chamber. So that was a massive help from Napier University.
And so you're able to test, how your blood sugars were reacting. What was, like, the situation with the insulin? Because obviously if insulin overheats, it becomes unstable and then it doesn't work. Were you aware of this going in?
I was aware of the crystallization in the pump, yes,
Yeah.
because blood glucose levels weren't under took complete control. So it was an easy fix. I just had to put a bit of time aside, get my backup insulin, and refill the pump up and get my glucose levels back under control.
I think that's great. One, you say it's an easy fix, but two, you state how you already had a backup plan and that backup plan was initiated. So the backup plan is part of the original plan. It's kind of like going into the game with the mindset of A, B, C, D can happen. And if A, B, C, D happens, this is the next list of things that we do to react
Yeah,
based
yeah,
on.
totally. I try to cover myself for all eventualities before going to events.
Mhm.
Sometimes I get it wrong, sometimes I don't, but I try to cover myself for any eventuality. Um, and that was one of them. So I had backup insulin in a
That's
Frio
really
bag,
awesome.
to keep it cool as well.
Yeah. Do you now personal question, and we'll talk about the Arctic in a little bit, but do you prefer the heat or do you prefer the cold?
I prefer the heat for holidays,
Yeah.
but I absolutely love the Arctic. The Arctic is just wow. The scenery is unbelievable. It's just beautiful, and the part of the world up in North Canada
Mhm,
in the Yukon, it's just uh, it's mind blowing how beautiful it is
mhm. Pristine, right? If there's a couple word description, I think untouched and pristine, it's gorgeous.
and crisp.
Yeah, crisp. So, now before we move on from the desert race, once you completed that and you were the first one, T1D, to complete that, what did your mindset become like after that, thinking of what's then possible for you next?
So people that I shared my bivouac with, which is your tent.
Mhm.
Basically, it's two poles with a tarpaulin thrown over. We decided that we would have a reunion in 2014. So we decided to do a race called the Highland Fling,
Yeah.
which is from Milngavie in Glasgow up to Tyndrum up the West Highland Way. So it's 53 miles. So we all met and we did that in 2014. So 18 miles into this Arctic, this ultra marathon, I felt something loose in my stomach. and what had happened was my bum bag had ripped my cannula off. Now, that was 18 miles in. I've still got 35 miles to go for this ultra marathon. So I thought, right, what am I going to do? Am I going to get to the next checkpoint at 23 miles and pull the pin? Or am I going to try and get to the finish line without a cannula? So
Yeah.
obviously, if I can't get insulin, I can't take carbohydrate. So I ran the last 35 miles solely on water by just keeping an eye on my CGM arrow. And if I seen my CGM arrow dropping a wee bit, I would put in a short intense sprint, which releases glycogen from the liver. And
Mhm.
that would, when I downloaded my CGM after the event, my CGM level was almost within a person without type 1 diabetes. You can see where I started the race and where I finished,
Mhm.
and you can see where my cannula came off, um, and the finish line. And then when I downloaded it, it's basically a straight line, almost within a person without type 1 diabetes.
That's fascinating. I mean, when you think of cardiovascular output and you think of running as a type 1 diabetic, you think, at least at first, of lowering glucose levels. Come to find out, release of stress hormones and the glycogen from the liver can actually raise blood sugar while running as well.
Yeah, it was actually I was invited down to a sports type 1 sports weekend down in Loughborough, where I was a guest speaker after the marathon Sabla, and it was a couple of the doctors doing presentations there that suggested it for the athletes, for the type 1 athletes that were at the event. So I was able to put it into practice a bit sooner than I expected to put it into.
And beyond the physical and the mental training and fortitude, what what went into your diet and nutrition before this for your body to be able to have those stores without running out within that ultra?
So the night before, we stayed with a good friend Derek, who shared the bivouac with me. He stays down in Glasgow, and we had a massive pasta dish with homemade bread. Then we got up really early in the morning and had a massive slices of homemade toast
Mhm.
with homemade bread and a massive bowl of Scots porridge. And the porridge is slow release carbohydrate, so it was perfect.
So sounds like a bunch of carbohydrates, but a bunch of good complex carbs, homemade bread,
Yeah,
the homemade meals.
and before my cannula came off at 18 miles, I
Mhm.
was drinking a carbohydrate drink,
Yeah.
which each sachet has got 47 grams of carbohydrate, but also a big hit of caffeine. Now, with being type 1 diabetic, if I take caffeine or if type 1 diabetic takes caffeine, the
Mhm.
adrenaline of the caffeine keeps your blood glucose level up, so you're not having to take so much carbohydrate on board. So that probably helped me a lot for the final 35 miles as well.
I actually just discovered this weekend. I ran a half marathon and I did a 48-hour caffeine fast. Now, normally I'm a huge caffeine drinker. I don't want to use the word addict, but I was getting headaches without caffeine for only 2 days.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so I usually have probably about a cup of coffee and double espresso shot in that, and maybe another cup of coffee throughout the day. But I did find that on top of the morning of the race, when I then had caffeine after not having it for 48 hours, on top of the hyper focused and ready to go mentality, locked in mindset I got, my blood glucose did rise as soon as I had that.
yep.
Normally doesn't on a normal day just because I kind of sip my coffee. I do it like right before my workouts. I don't really see that rise, but on race day, that was like the first time that I ever saw the massive caffeine rise.
It would have been a mix of the caffeine and the adrenaline of the event as well. Just being on the start line with so many people, it just, yeah, it's buzzing.
So let's talk about my favorite kind of exposure, which is the cold. I love the cold. Being being an aspiring mountaineer. Let's dive into now. Once we talked about the desert, now we can talk about the Arctic. What the 350 Ultra was, the Arctic 6633.
So it is a race in the Yukon in North Canada in the Arctic, called the 663 Ultra Marathon, and it's 352 miles, which is 567 kilometers. It's not like the Marathon Sabla where there was set stages and there was camps overnight. This one, you've got, I think it's 8 days to finish it,
Okay.
and you do as much as you want to do in a day, and you just stop at the side of the road, and you either get in your bivy bag or you wait to the checkpoint, which is generally a small school hall where you can get a wee sleep inside. Um, it's a self-sufficient ultramarathon, so you tow a palk. So a palk is a sledge with wheels. So when I went on 2016, there was 13 people on the start line,
Mhm.
and the start line's in Eagle Plains, and it goes all the way to the Arctic Ocean to a place called Tuktoyaktuk. And I was the only one on the start line with a two-wheeled palk. So what the two-wheeled palk did was bob,
Yeah.
and I only had a waist harness on as well. A few other things didn't go my way. The organizer reckons that you should go to Whitehorse, which is still 500 miles from the start line,
Mhm.
a week before to make sure that your luggage with your compulsory kit arrives. So my compulsory kit didn't arrive when I got off the plane, but Martin, the organizer, says, "Don't worry, Roddy, this happens every year. We'll go back to the airport tomorrow." Back to the airport next day, no compulsory kit. I'm starting to get really worried that I'm not going to be able to start without my compulsory kit. So I wasn't getting much sleep at nights,
Mhm.
and this was for 6 days because on the day that all the other athletes were heading up to um, Eagle Plains, my kit still hadn't arrived.
Yeah.
So Martin said to me, he says, "Right, one of the other organisers, he'll stay back with you. We'll start heading up to Eagle Plains. Hopefully your luggage arrives in the afternoon flight this afternoon, and then you can make your way up." So lucky for me, round the carousel, I could see my bag, and it was like, whoa. But I hadn't been sleeping very well so I was quite sleep deprived going into the race.
Yeah.
So race started, and as I say, I was the only one on the start line. There was 13 people on the start line, so it's not like the Marathon Sabla where there was 1,050 on the start line. There's not that many idiots in the world that's going to do a 567-kilometer Arctic ultra marathon in the freezing cold with severe strong winds. The winds are sometimes strong enough that they blow the ice road trucks over. So it's pretty brutal.
What time of year is this?
It's in March, so
Okay.
very
Yes,
cold.
you're still
So
experiencing
yeah,
very
yeah. So
cold.
the final 120 miles is on the frozen Mackenzie River,
Yeah.
so which the ice trucks drive over. So it's pretty crazy, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So day three into it, I started having hallucinations, and I was convinced I was on the wrong road. So I had a spot tracker for people to follow my progress. So because there is only one road from Eagle Plains to Tuktoyaktuk,
Yeah.
and but I was convinced I was on the wrong road with these hallucinations. So I was going up and down this road, convinced I was on the wrong road, and I was doing this for hours.
Mhm.
Lynn, my wife, was watching the spot tracker on her laptop, and she was convinced I was having a hypo with the diabetes, but I wasn't. It was hallucinations.
Mhm.
So eventually I got to the checkpoint. Then the next day I got up, and about 12 miles into the stage, I'd already drunk my fluid. So I stopped, got my flasks out of my palk with my energy drink, filled my uh, bladder full of energy drink and warm water,
Mhm.
and put the top back on, and put the bladder back into my rucksack, and put my rucksack back on, but I didn't put the lid on the bladder properly. So
Ooh.
3 litres of fluid poured over me.
Yeah.
So with the cold and the wind chill, it's -50,
Mhm.
and I am absolutely soaked. So I'm like, I'm going to freeze to death because I've been so wet, and the
Yeah.
clothes started to freeze.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, Kevin, who was the organizer that stayed back in Whitehorse for me, he passed just not long after this had happened.
Yeah.
If this had happened another day, sometimes you don't see the organisers for like 4 or 5 hours. So
Wow.
luckily for me, Kevin, so it was
Yeah.
like fate. So Kevin took me back to the checkpoint. We got all my clothes off, put them on radiators. So that was more wasted time. But
Yeah.
it was from my stupidity of trying to ration and make that time by not putting the top on properly. So it was my own fault.
Yeah. And
So
then
later that,
a different fear of a hypothermia is that you don't when you're facing that amount of exposure and temperatures, that's the last thing that you want,
oh,
is to even sweat freezing isn't safe, never mind having water actually poured on you.
yeah, yeah. So as I say, it was my own fault. So later that day, um, I wasn't far from the checkpoint, and Johnny the medic came out to check on me, and I started hallucinating again. And I was convinced Johnny was head of SAS um, a training, and he was putting me through my final part of SAS training.
Mhm.
I was absolutely convinced about this, and I didn't do this, but I thought I'd phoned the MOD, Ministry of Defence,
Yeah.
and told them that there was mine bombs in the road and it wasn't a safe environment for anyone to be on. But they were just hallucinations that just
Yeah.
felt so real.
Yeah.
Um, as I say, eventually got to the checkpoint, had a really good day the next day, and then was on the Mackenzie River for the last 120 miles, and my back was in absolute agony with the pulk bobbing and just
Yeah.
having a waist harness. So with about 60, 70 miles to go, I had to make a serious decision, which I didn't like to do, which was a pull out. So the next car that passed, I asked them if they could go to the next checkpoint and speak to the organisers and see if they could come out and pick me up, which they did.
Yeah.
Now, when I made my mind up that I was pulling out for my own health, long-term health, I also made my mind up that if I could convince Lynn and my family and friends that I would go back in 2017 and try and finish unfinished business. So I hadn't mentioned to Lynn that I wanted to go back,
Mhm.
but we had one cat in the house called Corky, and Lynn had wet cat food for it, and she was told when it was just a wee kitten that it wasn't good for their teeth. So
Mhm.
she took it to the rescue centre where all the rescued cats and everything go. So I'm in work one day and my phone goes, and it was Lynn, and she goes, "Roddy, there's this lovely little kitten here. Can we have it?" And I'm like, "Ping! Right, I'll tell you what. You can have that wee kitten if I can go back to the Arctic next year." And she went. I just took the opportunity probably, and she goes, "Yep, that's a deal." So 2017, try and go back and do unfinished business.
That's amazing. I think if there's one lesson we take away from today's conversation is to take the chance of any opportunity as soon as it presents itself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Don't
Catch them at a
hesitate.
weak moment.
That is really great. And I mean, so you kinda knew it in your mind that you personally wanted to go back, and I can imagine, obviously, I can't speak to you, but I can imagine that was frustrating you up until the point where you were at that starting line again. As type 1 diabetics, we are always very concerned about our blood sugar, our levels, but it seems like you're experiencing a whole new level of type 1 is just one of the things that you have to not worry about. I don't think worry is the right word, but focus on for your not only your performance, but for your safety. So making like tactile decisions when you got to the starting line in 2017, what was that transformation in your mind over that year period to try to either convince yourself or build confidence that this time you can do it?
Okay, so I felt this when I pulled out. I let myself down. I felt I let my family down,
Mm,
my friends down, but more importantly, I felt I let the worldwide type 1 diabetes community down by not finishing because because I had the spot tracker, there was so many folk all over the world
Mhm.
watching my spot tracker, and all of a sudden they would have seen it stop and then start going again at 50, 60 mile an hour, and they would have realised he's not in the race anymore. So I felt let everyone down. So I went back in 2017, complete different mindset, different fuel, because I knew what really worked in 2016. So what really worked, I just stuck to. And I
Mhm.
also used a four-wheel pulk with a full upper body harness, so it spread the weight over the body rather than just. And the four-wheel pulk didn't bob; it just went along nice and smooth.
Yep.
So 2017, there was 26 idiots on the start line, including Tibi from Romania, who'd won it twice before.
Mhm.
So started the race, got to the first checkpoint. The first checkpoint is at the Arctic Circle, and it's just in the back of a trailer with a little log burner in it, and you get a chance to fill up your flasks and stuff. And I had my first hypo in the trailer. Now that was the only hypo I had. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that was the only. No, it wasn't the only hypo I had. I
Right.
tell a lie. I had another one, very quite close to the finish line. I didn't bolus throughout the race. I
Mhm.
managed to go with just my basal just tickling into me because
Yep.
the exercise was doing the work of the insulin.
And
Because I averaged,
did you have a
fi-
reduced basal too?
no,
Nope.
I'm on a quite
Okay.
a small basal. I'm not 0.4 an hour
Okay.
units, and I basically used porridge for the whole race. And if I was really, really cold, I would make a really watery porridge and just drink it. And you could feel that warming the insides up. So,
Yep.
complete different strategy from the previous year. The four-wheel pulk was amazing. I didn't have any back trouble. Had a really good race. Um, when I was talking about 2016, I was telling you that hallucinations happened on day three.
Yep.
My first hallucinations didn't happen until about 4 or 5 miles to the finish line.
Wow.
Now, I reckon your brain, as I say, is a very strong tool.
Yep.
So, with about 16 kilometres, 10 mile to go, I could see the lights of the hamlet of Tatuatut light up the sky.
Mhm.
And I went, "You dancer, you finally beaten this beast." And as I say, your brain's a very strong tool. When I did that, I let all my defences down. Not intentionally. It
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
brain had said, "You've done it,"
Yeah.
and it just let all
You
my
could feel the
defences
buzz,
down.
but you weren't there yet.
So, with about 4 mile to go, I decided, listen to your body this year. Don't think you're in the wrong road and lose hours.
Yeah.
Listen to your body. Stop. Go into your pulk. Fill your have a drink. Have an energy drink, and just wait until things are sorted. So the road at the side was snowbanks, and for me, the hallucinations were people putting their hands out, begging,
Yeah.
and there was a massive hole in the road behind my left-hand side
Yeah.
that if I was to slow down, I would end up falling in that hole. I had the energy drink. By the time I'd packed my flasks away, put my harness back on, put my rucksack back on, the snowbank was back to snowbank, and the hole in the road had gone. So it was worthwhile listening to my body and and just taking your time, do what you need to do to get to
Yeah.
the finish line.
Absolutely
So
fascinating that you can still process that when your body's under so much stress and exhaustion at that point that you are having these hallucinations, but you still have the ability to be yourself and think yourself and kinda overcome your mind that's trying to overcome you. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So eventually got to the finish line,
Mm,
and I finished in second place. I
nice.
got the sixth fastest time in the history of the race, and first type 1 diabetic, and I was the first Scotsman to ever finish the race as well. So it was it was so emotional going up the finish straight, finally beating the beast.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so it finishes on the Arctic Ocean, which is stunning
Yeah.
as well. Um, just It was
What is what is the light situation? Because I've been to Alaska in May and June, so that region of the world during that time. But March, it's not fully so like May and June, it's for our listeners, it's fully light in Alaska. The dusk it doesn't get completely dark. Does March have short daylight? Is it still mainly dark? Or is
it's pretty short. There is a good bit of daylight during the day, but when the lights can the darkness sets in, it really gets really cold.
yeah,
So you have to put your head torch on. You have to put on your massive big down jacket, your big down mitts.
yeah,
You have to put your head torch, as I say, on, but also you've got to put on flashing cycle lights on the back of the pelt
yeah,
so that the ice road truckers don't run into the back of you.
yeah.
So yeah,
And then
so I did the whole
you
6
gotta keep
days.
your insulin under probably as close to your body, so the insulin that's dripping
Yeah,
into you and then
so
your backup insulin as well, correct?
I got a Lycra pouch
Yeah,
with a belt round it so that the insulin could be next to my skin with the body warmth, um, which worked ideal. I
how
got
were you
at
looking
one
at your CGM?
CGM was on my phone.
Okay. Yeah,
At one stage, it wasn't that far to go to the finish. About 150 miles to go. My phone decided it didn't really like the cold anymore, so I didn't have CGM. So I was
yeah,
going back to old school finger pricking,
yeah,
which in that temperatures is not ideal. Trying to get blood out your fingers,
yeah,
and then the test strips, the little tube of test strips. When I've put it in first to do my first test, it said couldn't read the test strips because it's too cold.
wow.
So 20 minutes before I was going to do a test, I had to get my little tube of test strips and put them down my underwear
Yeah,
to warm them up to pu- to so that I could get a blood glucose reading. This is all just making stuff up in the move, because it had never been done before. But yeah,
stuff that probably like, it made sense at the time of where's the body warmth, you know,
totally.
near the
Yep.
groin area, and it's kinda
Not the most not the most comfortable thing, but
oh.
yeah, it needs must.
What was your I mean, when you didn't have the CGM working and then you were waiting those 20 minutes, what was going through your mind of questioning what your blood sugar was? Was it kind of like a hallucination situation where you're trying to
No, no, no. If you felt sort of drunk, sort of, that
Mhm.
would be a feeling of hypo, and
Yeah,
I didn't,
okay. So it was
so
more
I
like
was fine.
yeah,
Yeah, and the medic would just turn up every now and then and go, "What was your blood glucose reading at your last test?" Sorry, and I would just tell him because
yeah,
that's fine. On you go. Um, I did the whole 6 days, 21 hours with a total of 18 hours sleep. So you're just picking a little bit of sleep here and a little bit of sleep there, but it was worth it just to finish second. And just to raise so much awareness of what can be achieved living with type 1 diabetes. So I've got a good story for you.
yeah,
So in Tip Tuk, the final where you sleep is in this little school hall. So the janitor is Scottish,
yeah,
and he went to the finish line, and he had a big Scottish flag, and he had Flower of Scotland blazing out of his car when I was coming up the finish straight.
yeah,
So then we went to school after it, and the head teacher came up to me and she goes, "The whole school's been watching your progress, Roddy. We were hoping that we'd finish after 9 o'clock so that the whole school could come and watch you finish, but you finished at 28 minutes past 8. But we've been watching your progress with your spot tracker and everything." She goes, "You're not going to believe it. We've got a health week this week, and today just so happens to be on diabetes. Would you mind doing a wee talk
yeah.
in the school?" So
Is this right after you finished?
I'd literally just finished this 352-mile race with 18 hours sleep, and I'm in
Yeah.
this classroom speaking to all these little kids that look like Eskimos. They're just so cute, telling them about type 1 diabetes. It was amazing. It was really amazing.
That's really great, and at this point, did you even take a shower at the moment, or did you just head straight there?
The showers weren't working in the school hall, in the school. So, yeah.
That's really awesome, and I
But
think
I was I was
Uh,
buzzing so much from finishing. The last thing I wanted to do was sleep anyway. I just wanted to smile.
Talking about an adrenaline bump, and then also you say this, and I think it's amazing to have basically, it's a remote village in the Arctic, and you are now spreading awareness of type 1 diabetes to places in the world that may be impacted by it, but do not have the education that other places in the world do. So that's really awesome that it's just like right away you're not only spreading awareness, but you're spreading education.
Yeah, I after the Arctic before COVID, I was going into quite a lot of schools and doing presentation about just my life basically. The
Yeah.
former cyclist, the marathon Saba, the other ultras that I've done, and the Arctic. And when there's pupils in the school that have got type 1 diabetes and they see my slides and what I've done, they're just massive smile on their face after the presentation because they're like, whoa, maybe it shouldn't stop me achieving my dreams and goals in life. So
Mhm.
it makes everything that I've done worthwhile when you see the children with type 1 diabetes smiling, realizing that what can be achieved.
That's great to hear that it provides you that sense of purpose. Because I mean, I can just tell you from me personally talking to you, that's exactly what you're doing to me. And I know and I hope it's gonna be exactly what this conversation will do to our audience and the people listening. It really is. It's like if you personally, Roddy, can accomplish all this stuff, maybe our goal isn't to run 350 miles in the Arctic, but maybe if that's the pinnacle, if that's the top, imagine any and everything else that we can do.
Totally. See, when I did the Marathon Sabla, this was in 2013,
Mhm.
I could receive numerous emails, but I could only send one email, allocated one email a day.
Yeah.
So the organisers ground all the bivouacs with emails, and I would generally get quite a pile because folk were encouraging me. And I
Mhm.
remember getting one from a family of a 13-year-old child with type 1 diabetes from America saying that what I was doing was changing their attitude and they were going to allow their 13-year-old girl to have a sleepover with her friends. Now, that was so emotional. It just meant that when things were really hard in the heat during the stages, that email just helped me put blinkers on and
Yeah.
just charge on. It was like, wow, yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's something that a lot of I mean, they call this the invisible condition for a reason, and it's just there's so many obstacles, and the truth is that daily life doesn't stop with type 1 diabetes. It's not like we can put the rest of life aside, which I think provides so much fear for people and preventing people from actually wanting to go out and do something as simple as having a sleepover with their friends. Um,
totally.
and I think it's you're somebody that provides comfort, but reality to the situation of things that can be done too, because it's not fantasizing when you've actually done it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I said earlier that I class myself as a very lucky type 1 because I've not had to live with it all my life and I was diagnosed at 40. But
Mhm.
another reason I class myself as a very lucky type 1 is the technology that's available when I was diagnosed in
Mhm.
2008. It's it's amazing. Like the CGM, the Dexcom CGM, a child can share it with 10 different people. So
Yeah,
they can be anywhere in the world and their parents can see what their blood glucose level is. It's like, whereas I've heard stories of how you would do your blood, find out what your blood glucose levels in the past by testing your urine.
yeah.
So I class myself very lucky. I've been made a Dexcom warrior in 2013, so I get a Dexcom free, um, and just having an insulin pump, stuff like that. It's but also I still, although I've got all this technology, I still keep a diary, keep my blood glucose levels in it. So you're basically building. I'm still building up my own manual, and when I get asked by families of people that got children or just anyone that's older that's been diagnosed as well, what's one bit of advice you give to start with? And I'd say go to this um, news agents, get yourself a diary, and start your own Haynes manual on your type 1 diabetes, because everyone's diabetes is different. So what works for one person won't necessarily work for the other. So
Mhm.
that's what I would recommend, a diary.
And why do you think that's so strong doing that with the technology? Because as we know, the technology is amazing and it's only getting better, but it's not 100% foolproof.
I just think if you've got your diary, you can put your blood glucose levels in. You don't necessarily have to, because you've got the technology where you can look back, but also you can put in what worked in your training.
Mhm.
So if you're on the golf course, for example, and you take your blood glucose levels before the golf, you write in the diary what you took on board during your golf, and then take your blood glucose levels after. You're finding out what works for you, and then next time you play the same course, if it's a hilly course, you can look back and see what worked. If it's a flat course, you might not need the same amount of a carbohydrate. So I just feel that doing the diary builds up your own Haynes manual on your type 1 diabetes.
Did
It's worked
you
for me.
did you have this kinda diary mindset before because you were an athlete going into your diagnosis?
Totally. When we raced, we would take a resting heart rate. As soon as we woke up in the morning, your resting heart rate would go on. You would go to the toilet, do your pee, and then get on the scales. That would go into the diary as well.
Yep.
Your training would go into your diary. All your races would go into your diary. So yeah, it was an easy transition for me to just continue using the diary. It worked for my cycling before type 1, and it's definitely worked since being
How
diagnosed.
so, like, for somebody who wants to say, let's say, a young kid with type 1 diabetes playing golf, doing the diary, I mean, everybody can be different, obviously, but, like, how descriptive do you think it needs to get in order for it to work? And I say that in questioning of, like, how much time really does it take out of the way of everything else through the day? I can imagine this can be something that is really well worth it and also be, if you get used to it, very quick throughout the day.
It takes no time. If you've got CGM, you just okay, bang it in the diary. Go to the golf, play your golf. When you get home, what did you eat? Did you have a banana? Did you have an energy bar? Did you
Yeah.
have a Lucozade bottle? Write that in the diary. What course was it? So that you can look back at that course again. What was your blood glucose level when you finished?
Mhm.
It takes no time.
And then do you have a dedicated time, like once a week, to then look through the diary and kind of compare trends? Or is that something you do on a daily basis?
Eh, More so for the endurance, like
Mhm.
the stuff I'm doing now. Like the other day was the longest ride in the bike I've done for a while, and it was only an hour 45. So I'm not doing endurance stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
Eh, I was on the bike this morning on the turbo trainer in the shed, and it was only 40 minutes. So you're not having to write so much the big stuff in the diary for that. I just write my glucose levels before, how long I was on for, what the intensity was, and what my blood glucose level was when I finished.
Yeah. Makes total sense. And I think that's an actionable tool that people can take away. And because it is working with the technology, we can use the technology to help us, but creating that manual for us because it is so distinctively
Yeah.
different.
And another thing, when I go to my diabetic clinic, they really like to see the diary as well.
Yeah.
So they can download my CGM on their monitor, but for them to see it in my diary exactly what's going on, they really like to see it as well. So it's helping them.
Yeah. Must have really good handwriting. Mine is chicken scratch.
No,
One question I do really want to ask you, and this is from somebody who is aspiring to intensify my endurance output. While being Italian American, family is a very close aspect to me. And also, kind of of the same topic that we discussed, that diabetes doesn't stop throughout the day, and there's a bunch of other stuff. Kind of in what I call society and on a day to day basis, how were you able to kind of focus, and this might be contributed to you being a professional athlete, but how were you able to basically juggle the family life, a social life, a training life, and type 1 diabetes on top of it? And with that, like, what's were there any sacrifices that you had to make?
One of the reasons I took up cycling, sorry, running when I retired from racing was because it takes up less time. So, like, a 1 hour run is equivalent to 3 hours on the bike, so it meant that I could spend more time with the family. And um, then I was diagnosed with type 1, and 5 years later, I decided, because I knew nothing about it, to because the kids were getting just that little bit older, um, to do something to raise awareness, and that was the marathon Sava. And I tried to do my training when the kids were at school, and my days off and stuff, so I wasn't taking time away from the family. And if we would go on holiday, I would just take my running shoes and do a run, generally quite early in the morning.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you fit it into your daily life, and then the type 1 diabetes kinda the management became like a backdrop, or you're just doing it subconsciously?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, again, that's something that I want to aspire to be like, is because it is difficult. You hear people risking it all, sacrificing it all, to be the greatest and to have a well-rounded family life, to have an accomplished, athletic career, but then to also have well-managed type 1 diabetes. To me, that's like the triple crown. So it's
Yeah. As I say, I don't always get it right, but when and during the Highland Fling, the 53-mile one I was telling you about, when the cannula ripped off, the next ultra marathon I did, I fitted two cannulas. So one would fall off.
yeah.
You're trying to cover all the eventualities. You have another cannula fitted. So it's just a case of, if you make a mistake, next time, what can I do if that mistake happens again?
Mhm.
So that's why the extra cannula, um, during the next ultra marathon, it just meant that I just unclipped it from one and fitted it onto the other.
Yeah.
So it's making it up as you go along, but it's just picking up little tips from people as well. And so, yeah, if this conversation helps anyone, then it's definitely made everything I do worthwhile.
And I know for a fact that it will. The last question I would like to ask you is something that I like to ask in a variation to everybody, and you kinda mentioned it for kids growing up with type 1 diabetes, but if you were to encounter perhaps somebody very similar to yourself, or not even similar, but somebody around the age that you got diagnosed at, and then the years since you've been a type 1 diabetic, what would you say to somebody who just got either just or has been diagnosed at a later age in life?
Don't let it stop you achieving your dreams and goals in life, because if you control your type 1 diabetes, it shouldn't stop you achieving your dreams and goals in life. Um, as I say, I've not let it stop. If anything, it's made me do crazier events than I would have done before being diagnosed, just to show people that um, it shouldn't stop you achieving your dreams and goals. And that could be a game of golf. It could be
Mhm.
your first 10K. It doesn't have to be a 567-kilometer ultra marathon. It can be the smallest of things. But if if when you were diagnosed, you think, that's it, I can't do anything now. That's me. I've got to hang up my wheels. I've got to stop running. You don't. You just have to learn eh, what to do with diabetes, and doing exercise. When I was diagnosed, Lynn got me the treadmill, so I could learn what exercise did to me as a type 1. And that's what I would say to anyone, is just don't go out into the hills straight away. Wait until you know what happens to your blood glucose levels.
Mhm. Educate yourself and then test trial
Diet,
yourself too.
diet.
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. I just wanna reiterate again how inspiring you are as a person, how awesome these stories are. I definitely think that this conversation is going to help people realize the possibility of what can be done, and you are an advocate because I mean, the whole Type 1 community already knows about you and the amazing accomplishments that you've had. I just thank you very much for joining me today, and I do want to hopefully one day climb Ben Nevis, which is near you.
Brilliant. That
We'll
is just
do it in
60
the
miles.
winter. So if we can make that happen, that'd be absolutely wonderful.
It's only 60 miles from my house. Thank you very much for the invite. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Roddy. Thank you, Roddy, for your incredible insight. You make such treacherous accomplishments seem like no big deal, proving that all you need to be successful is discipline, calculation, and grit. You are an inspiration to all of us T1Ds. We appreciate your athleticism and your wisdom. For all our content, please visit t1determined.net. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at T1D_endurance and Facebook at T1Determined. Until next time, keep pushing your limits. I hope this helps. Stay strong, stay determined. T1 Determined.